Hello? Are we on?
We're on.
We're on. Welcome. Friday afternoon. Welcome to the tent at Bell and Temple. I'm Pam. We're doing a live webinar this afternoon to have a conversation and maybe a few questions, some music, some poetry. Do you want to put on Oisín now?
Yeah.
So we're gonna play a little bit of music by Oisín O'Neill. Oisín lives in Tullow, not too far away from us. He's a singer and songwriter, and he's launching an album on Monday called Grand Design, which is going to be streaming on all the major platforms. And if you prefer to buy it, you can do it on. Oh.
That's live streaming.
So if you prefer to buy, you can go to what's it called?
Bandcamp.com.
Bandcamp.com. So bandcamp.com, Oisín O'Neill, Grand Design. That was Oisín O'Neill with Grand Design, which, apart from being a lovely song, very enjoyable and out on Monday on bandcamp.com, kind of an appropriate title for today. So what's happening today? Tom is going to speak about some of the big issues facing us now, including coronavirus, climate change, and the economic fallout that we're experiencing. So, the idea behind some of these issues, coronavirus, climate change, we know about these things because they're studied. So science is part of what Astria tries to do. We look at things, we observe, and then we try to help people, organizations, businesses, change system, change how they view the world. Broadening the perspective is one of the major things we try to do. So I just want to ask you a question. If you think of the word scientist, what is a scientist? What comes to mind? So just hold that image for a moment while I read you a little poem called The Mushroom Hunters by Neil Gaiman. Science, as you know, my little one, is the study of the nature and behavior of the universe. It's based on observation, experiment, and measurement, and the formulation of laws to describe the facts revealed. In the old times, they say, the men came already fitted with brains designed to follow flesh beasts at a run, to hurtle blindly into the unknown, and then to find their way back home when lost, with a slain antelope to carry between them, or, on bad hunting days, nothing. The women who did not need to run down the prey had brains that spotted landmarks and made paths between them, left at the thorn bush and across the scree, and looked down the bole of the half-fallen tree, because sometimes there are mushrooms. Before the flint club or flint butcher's tools, the first tool of all was a sling for the baby, to keep our hands free and something to put the berries and mushrooms in, the roots and the good leaves, the seeds and the crawlers. Then a flint pestle to smash, crush, to grind or break. And sometimes men chased the beasts into the deep woods and never came back. Some mushrooms will kill you, while some will show you gods. And some will feed the hunger in our bellies. Identify. Others will kill us if we eat them raw, and kill us again if we cook them once. But if we boil them up in spring water and pour the water away, and then boil them once more and pour the water away, only then can we eat them safely. Observe. Observe childbirth. Measure the swell of bellies and the shape of breasts, and through experience discover how to bring babies safely into the world. Observe everything. And the mushroom hunters walk the ways they walk and watch the world and see what they observe. And some of them would thrive and lick their lips, while others clutched their stomachs and expired. So, laws are made and handed down on what is safe. Formulate. The tools we make to build our lives, our clothes, our food, our paths home, all these things we base on observation, on experiment, on measurement, on truth. And science, you remember, is the study of the nature and behavior of the universe, based on observation, experiment, and measurement, and the formulation of laws to describe these facts. The race continues. An early scientist drew beasts upon the walls of caves to show her children, now all fat on mushrooms and on berries, what would be safe to hunt. The men go running on after beasts. The scientists walk more slowly, over to the brow of the hill, and down to the water's edge, and past the place where the red clay runs. They are carrying their babies in the slings they made, freeing their hands to pick the mushrooms. That's The Mushroom Hunters by Neil Gaiman. I find it a lovely, pragmatic and relatable view of what science and scientists are. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the poem. I'm going to pass you over to Tom now so he can... Welcome, Tom.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
I'd give you a kiss, but I might get in trouble.
Lovely Friday afternoon. All right, I'll give you the mic. I'll be quiet for a little while.
Okay.
Good luck.
Hello, everybody. If you want to ask questions, please type them in the chat. Pam might pick them up. And there are a couple of polls out there, just so you can engage a little bit with what we're talking about. We're running this as an open event, pretty much. And we do things like that around here a lot, because you never know what's going to happen. The last time we did something like this, we had one of the worst electrical storms in the neighborhood, so that none of the mobile phones worked and our systems just crashed. Today, you might have noticed it's very windy. So that's a little reminder that we do have climate volatility, despite the fact that we're all bearing down underneath this coronavirus. I want to apologize to you now if I use some bad language, because sometimes I get a little bit emotional about the things we're talking about, so I use a bit of French, Greek, Turkish, Chinese. The world has really changed, hasn't it? Once upon a time, we lived in Hong Kong, and I used to go to work on the trams from Wan Chai into Central. And lots of people would be there. It'd be early in the morning, and you'd get the guy with his bowl of congee. But you always had a few of the older lads expectorating on the floor of the tram, which I found a little bit unattractive, although maybe it's a natural behavior. And you just wouldn't get away with that today, would you? It's interesting how times change. I think one of the things that has happened in the last 2 months is that our behavior has really changed, hasn't it? We're starting to think for ourselves. We're starting to try to inform ourselves. You know, what is this coronavirus? What are we going to do about it? There seem to be two sort of institutional approaches to dealing with this rather strange situation. On the one hand, you have policies and public institutional movements to support elites, generally neglecting the poor. They can be a bit divisive because they're allocating blame to people, and they're looking for authority and control. I think a fellow Orban in Hungary has just made himself emperor or something recently, emperor for life or something. And then you have other mindsets which are trying to support public health, support the poor. I think 1 billion people have been pushed into poverty in the last couple of months now because of the breakdown in economic systems. There's community solidarity. I mean, there's a tiny little cafe up the road in Tullow here, a small community run by a couple of young, inspirational people, Helen and Lorraine, and they've just been making meals for people up in Dublin for the past couple of months. Amazing. And then, of course, that approach is also about getting information out and about. You know, it's precautionary rather than permissive. And it's sort of, what is the science? Should you wear a face mask and so on? Can you give me the next slide? Down. So one of the reflections I think people really are beginning to feel now as we move back onto the streets, lifting of the lockdown. One of the things that we've been feeling is how much space we have. And it's not a lot, really, is it? There are about 5 billion hectares of land used for agriculture, about 8 billion people. So that leaves a little bit over half a hectare per person, right? So let's say we all had to look after ourselves on this planet. We lived in family units, and a family is not just you and your kids, it's really the generational family, because that's how families actually work in real life. And they have different roles which change through life. So let's say 20 people. So a family of 20 gets 12.5 hectares, or 30 acres. So if you have any idea what that is, just imagine that you're going to have all of that land for your 20 people on your 12 hectares. What are you going to do with it? Because now you're going to grow your food, make your clothes, build your house. If you're in a city, you're really feeling the squeeze. London's got a population of maybe 10 million, a land area of maybe 2 billion square meters. So you have 2,000 square meters per person, which, you know, that's probably twice the size of what we've got in the tent. Shall we have a quick look at the tent? I'll just show you this tent, shall I? One moment. Oh, hi, Pam.
Hi.
And there we go. I'm just going to be back there. So, I'm going to plug the power back in. And there we go. Hi, did you miss me? So that's not a lot of space in London. And what everybody's dying to do is get out into the public space. Now, I found that to be a bit ironic because a lot of the zeitgeist, or well, maybe that's not the right term, the institutional mindset that we see in the media, whether that be, and the Western institutional mindset, is that the public isn't a great thing. Right? Government is bad. Government doesn't look at profit. Government isn't helpful. And yet, we're stuck in our homes and we all want to go out and benefit from the public area, have a bit of space. So I find that ironic because what we've done is we've kind of pushed the public and the government into a box. We've nipped its wings by passing regulations which require them to, say, be profitable, although their objective is to serve society. So I think that's a big issue. Now, in addition to people, there are a lot of animals. And I'm not talking about the wild beasties, because they're pretty much all gone. I'm talking about the cows and the sheep and the piggies and your pets. There are a billion cows, nearly a billion goats, nearly a billion sheep, nearly a billion dogs, and 23 billion chickens running around this planet every year. I think they keep getting killed for our dinner. But that's a lot of other animals to split up and put on your plot of land. For me, that sort of helped me feel that the planet is very busy, overpopulated, as well as overconsumption. So, here we are, worrying about corona, dying to get out. It's not just about corona, though, is it? Excuse me. It's not just about corona. Climate volatility, it hasn't gone away. Look at what's going on. We had a frost, was it last week, 10 days ago? Last week, in May. It was a ground frost. It took out the potatoes which were under fleece. It took out a lot of the top foliage. It took out a lot of blossoms. Very unusual. We haven't had rain for a very long time. Today was the first day. Now, Ireland always has climate volatility, but I think it's got even a little bit more extreme in the short time that we've been here. Nuclear risk hasn't gone away. It's got way more. Okay, the Americans have gone ballistic. Now, I'm sorry, I have friends in America who are listening to this, but I'm quite certain that you do not know what is going on in your military. I think you would be shocked to find out that in December last year, low-yield nuclear weapons were put on submarines prior to congressional approval. And these are very dangerous things because they're the sort of a little nuclear weapon that you can put on a submarine and park outside Moscow or North Korea, which is a very good reason for Moscow to go and have a little nuclear submarine and park it outside New York. So that was very bad, and it pushed the nuclear threat up. Everybody can feel the economic meltdown. I mean, even the people at the bottom. You think that when you're at the bottom you don't have far to fall, but when the food is actually taken out of your mouth, it's painful. And this isn't just in emerging economies. We're not talking about famine-struck Africa where you have locusts ravaging the countryside. We're talking about America, New York, people lining up to get food. That's because the pyramid got too big, right? That game of musical chairs was leveraged over the last 40 years, especially the last 20, to such an extent that there is no space for flexibility. There is no resilience in the system. Political dysfunction, black and white, that's not how the world works. We can feel the pain. We feel angry with our neighbors. And there's a lot of social pain. Imprisonment, it's a scar on morality of a technologically advanced society. We neglect people who are infirm. In this situation, people need to be given choices, even if that is a choice of self-determination. It should be their choice. Work is the worst thing. Even before we had the breakdown, the pandemic, the meltdown, jobs were becoming either very, very painful and undignified or almost make-work jobs to keep people in employment. And nowadays, there are people who have jobs, but they don't have work. And that is bearing on the emotional well-being of people because people like to work. They like to have something to do, whether they're paid for it or not. It gives a sense of dignity. And then, of course, we have people without food, and that's sad. So there are a lot of things going on in the background behind Corona, which have been exacerbated by the pandemic. A couple of quick thoughts about Corona. Inform yourself to the extent you can. What I understand about the coronavirus is that it's related to the common cold. So, it's not something very strange. We've seen a lot of these in the past decade. SARS-1, MERS, even there is some relation perhaps to some HIV research that we've heard about. It's 100% contagious. I think people have to realize that you will catch it. Perhaps we have it. We don't know. There is a 1% morbidity. That's a good benchmark. So there is a very good chance that somebody you know will die from it in a short time frame, a year or two. And then we get on to the really weird things. Asymptomatic, okay? You don't know if you've got it. You don't show symptoms. So that makes it very difficult to know whether you should stay away from people. And we don't know how long that will last. Another is that the symptoms seem to vary. So that suggests that maybe it adapts to the environment it's sitting in. Again, these suggest that coronavirus is going to be with us for a very long time. And the kind of changes that we've had to institute very quickly, going to have to live with or adapt for a future. So, yeah, we're going to live with this for a while. And I think we need to face that reality and ask ourselves, what does it mean for the future? Now, I'm just going to pause for a minute and ask Pam if anybody has responded to any of the questions, asking whether they would like to address a particular issue or not.
Where do I find that?
Oh, excuse me. There. Okay, so you've got the chat there.
Oh, yeah.
So it says stuff there.
Thanks, guys. You're
Who's
doing
it
great.
from?
That's from Helen.
Okay, and then, what was the other thing? Polls. There's some stuff in here, maybe. Oh no. I thought we had some polls. There's a poll. So if people polling, well, oh, you probably have to go and look at it at the other place. Have you got the other thing open? Sorry. I'm going to close that.
It's just thinking people were talking about polls, about sound.
Yeah. Just going to go here.
Oh.
So you might be able to find the meeting here. Anyway, I'm going to go on, and I'm going to talk about.
Sorry, I'm not very good at this.
I'm going to talk about system change.
It's on. Actually, we're on. Okay. That's
Okay. No. What do you say?
over here. System.
What is?
System change.
This one?
Down one, I think.
No, I want to talk about this, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to talk about this.
Okay.
No,
Light.
not that one. Yeah, the light.
Second one down. Oh.
Yeah, okay. And don't share it. Just go to the first slide.
Am I not on it?
The next, because they're hidden. Anyway. Okay, no questions. That's great. Well, not really, but anyway. And thanks, Helen. I know you're out there. I'm quite impressed. Helen and Lorraine heard that we were talking about them, despite the fact that they're slaving away in the kitchen in Tala, and I know that for a fact, because they were going to come here. Now, okay, I think it's time for some stories. How did we get here? Now, the thing about Corona that I've been scared to mention, and I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody at all, but I'm almost grateful for the effect that it has had. For 20 years, since we changed course and started trying to find the answers, look for the answers and find them, that's the wind. The first thing I did was to do research, and so for 20 years I've been wanting the world to stop, because I knew we were burning ourselves up. Not just burning the planet, that was evident from the data that you could look at a long time ago. Rachel Carson was writing in the 50s about this and trying to get pushed down by industry. It's still going on. The money is trying to kill nature. Okay? And all I wanted was for things to stop and think. And it was my friends and my peers, the people that I went to school with, that I knew would feel the same way, because we all had that amazing education. We were in positions of responsibility, whether it be in commerce or banking or industry or politics or journalism or art or wherever it was. And so they would know that we can do things a different way. And nothing happened, and it was very exasperating living through the noughties when people were throwing money at the stock market, gambling and killing the planet, and nothing happened in 2008, and it still hasn't happened, and we still have a broken financial system with an unfundable financial system. And it just goes on. And then this morning, at the beginning of the year, I was driving my parents to the airport, and I was chatting with my dad. And my dad's a very amazing person. He's getting on, but only in years. He's still a little teenager. Passion, he runs every day, goes swimming in the sea. And he likes to make the world a better place, to make a difference. And we were driving up to the airport in Dublin, and I asked him, Dad, what do you think? I have a bad feeling. I mean, things are going bad in the world. What will make people realize it and look up from what they're doing? Because I can't think of anything. And he said, well, what about a financial crisis? And I said, well, we had one of those, and it didn't seem to work. In fact, we just sort of papered over it, and we go on. And he said, yeah, I agree. And that was pretty tough coming from him, because he's a dyed-in-the-wool investment banker, been doing the Wall Street Shuffle for 50 years. I don't know. Yeah, 50 more. 55 years. Now, okay, for the last 30, 40 years, he's been educating children in developing countries, pestalozzi world. Very modestly, doesn't crow about it. So that made me worry, and I dropped him off, and I said goodbye, and that was the last time I saw him. And it may be the last time I see him and my mother. In February, I phoned them and I said, oh, look at this. I think you better come over here because they're going to close the airports in 2 weeks. And they said, oh, no, they're not. And in 2 weeks, they closed the airports. But that's good because they're at home and they're happy. And if they were here, we couldn't see them anyway. We had a bad beginning of the year with the assassination of the fellow over in Iran. And then coronavirus was on our doorsteps, actually January the 1st. And along it comes, and we resist and we resist. And now we've just had to stop, and it's made us think. And what is interesting is that the behaviors that we have changed to are the kind of behaviors that we need to do in order to live with nature, to have the kind of system change that we're looking for, that kind of slowdown. Now, what is system change? I'm going to have a little pause here because I use the word all the time, but I don't think anybody understands what it is. I'm not sure I do. I use it to frame the idea that I'm talking about, and it's really a big picture perspective on how the world works. And I look at the system and I say the system is broken. I've already explained the economic situation, the social situation, the political problems, just top line, the tension in the world. The fact that there isn't enough foot space for us as the species, simply humans. There is not space on the planet for us. The numbers don't add up. So I think the system is broken. So what does that mean? And I think a lot of people look around and they say, okay, so what does that mean? What do we do? Who do we go to for answers? And the funny thing is there's nobody to go to for answers because nobody's done this before. It's just not possible. Nobody's conceived of what we're going through. We've been in the same system for so long. Slightly different. But in the last century, we have obtained perspective. A bigger perspective. Through science. And science is a very important idea. Science is about knowledge as opposed to belief. I'd like to talk about it a bit later if you'll let me. So, we step back and we can see this system and we can move forward to another way of doing things. The technology is actually within us, as I believe it. It is a whole systems technology. It's the technology of the universe. It's how nature works. And we work through nature. We work through universal laws, right? As does nature. And if we start to develop our systems, our human systems, our social systems, political systems, economic systems, to reflect the laws of nature, to work with nature, then we will be able to move on. Okay? We've all started doing this around the world. For 20 years, we've been talking about sustainability and triple bottom line, which is great. But for me, sustainability is right at the bottom of the rung of ladders, right? Sustainability means you can stay alive. It really is survival kind of mentality. It's not very aspirational for a species that can fly to the moon, can fly to Mars probably, I don't know what we're doing now, and has the mobile phones, right, to talk to people. And look at what we're doing in a tent in the middle of nowhere, live streaming across the planet. Come on, guys. We've got the technology, we've got the understanding. Okay? We understand how things work. We understand how nature works, and we can work with it. We don't have to keep polluting. We don't have to have linear mentality. We can have closed system thinking, cradle to cradle instead of cradle to landfill mountain. It's very frightening. It's impacting us, our children. Very fast, very now. Corona might be seen as a bounty because it has forced us to stop and think about what we're going to have to do in 20 years when the oil runs out. And we have no choice but to live on only 20% of the energy that we're consuming today. These things are serious. And they shouldn't be just pushed out of the door because you can't address them in a concise manner on a news show for 2 minutes or in an advertisement for 30 seconds. I think people will live much more enriching lives when they get out of the box and the cubicle and the car and engage with the universe. And I think the answers are right there in science, in ourselves. And system change is about that. And we're moving in that direction because of Corona. And I think it's going to affect all of us. Now, oh, the sheep have escaped. Come on, lads. Oh, no. Get them out the vegetables. Go, Richard, run. No, this way. Out there. They're going to be eating the vegetables. Get them. They're going for the beans. Go, 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 go. I am serious. This is not good.
He's going to scare them. He went the wrong way.
Of course he did. Oh, jeery me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if anybody's still online enjoying the fun.
You've had a hello from Antonia.
Hello, Antonia.
And you've had a hello from Bobby.
Hey, Bobby, I can't believe it. Conspiracy Bobby.
And
Ricky Bobby.
From San Jose. She's up early.
Oh, my goodness. Good morning, good morning. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for your patience.
Did I do the right thing?
Yep, next one. Doesn't need to be that big.
How do I...
Just a click. One click on the mouse.
Okay.
Ah, thank you. Right. Now, I think this is an important subject, and I really don't want to antagonize anybody. I don't think I will. I'm going to use fairly non-partisan words. I'm going to talk about faith, free will, and language. Right, no, faith, free will, and choices. Now, so we choose based on our inner values and how we believe our environment works, okay? That's how we make choices about whether we buy this car or that car or no car or a bicycle or work, okay? And that's in the context of how we see the world around us, our beliefs, okay? So we have values and we have beliefs. The question is, are those we're going to be looking at beliefs, I suppose. Now, what world do we see? Do we see a good world? A bad world, a rich, a poor, abundant or scarce? What we see affects how we interpret the world around us. The way we start behaving is we copy the people around us. We copy our parents, we imitate them. We copy our family, we imitate our siblings. And then maybe to fit in, we start following advertisements. We wear the fashion of our friends. I know that everybody's wearing my uniform today. Yes. And we have to fulfill our basic needs as we do that. Okay? We get influenced by education, by what other people are doing, and so on. Now, we make our choices to spend often by comparing ourselves to other people, right? That's our environment. Maybe that's not so healthy. Everyone wants the same things, right? Whether people are good or bad, rich or poor, believe in this or believe in that. They want safety, and shelter and food and friends. They want to know themselves. Metacognition. That's a very basic set of needs for a human, because a human has huge capacities. A human has capacities to go beyond knowing yourself. Okay? So you can have that survival, and you can have your friends and your food, and you can know who you are, and then you can go and do more. You can become altruistic and let go of your ego completely. Okay? So we all believe we make good choices. We believe that they're logically good and morally good. Although sometimes we do let others choose for us. That's trusting, isn't it? We let our parents, teachers, our bosses choose for us what uniform we'll wear, what time to show up at work, what time to have lunch. Politicians, the companies, and our celebrities will start telling us what to wear and how to think and what to pierce. Do we put heart over mind? Do we put belief over knowledge? Now, I think most of us are relying on belief still, although we live in a fairly scientific world. Okay? A scientific process asks a question, makes a hypothesis, tests the hypothesis. Does it work? If it works, then maybe it's proven, we retest. If it's disproven, we throw it out. The interesting thing about the process is you keep criticizing what you're doing and asking, is it right, is it right, is it right? That's a scientific process. That yields knowledge, right? It taught us about fire and the wheel. It's how we got the combustion engine. It's how we get to fly in aircrafts. It's how we got the internet, mobile phones, and how we go to Mars. That's science. It's knowledge. It's testing and retesting. Actually making progress. Whereas belief doesn't necessarily do that. That's a kind of an interpreting the world around you, creating that hypothesis of how things work. Oh, look, there's that bright thing going up over the sky again. That must be a god. I think it's a god. We're going to call it a god. That's my hypothesis. It's a god. And maybe that becomes superstition, because after 7 days it keeps happening, and then more days and it keeps happening, and then you say, yeah, I believe that's happening, and then it becomes religion, even though you don't actually know what's going on, because you cannot test your hypothesis. So that's how we emerge and find out about gods. And the trouble is, you get those gods, those superstitions, and they get stuck in a box, and you're not allowed to change them. You're not allowed to challenge them. And that's where the belief differs from the knowledge. Religion gives you answers that may not be questioned. Science or philosophy explores questions that might never be answered, but it explores them. So, is it that people have faith? Well, everyone believes in a higher power. I find it quite shocking. The Pew Center in the States, they did a very, very large survey last year and came to the conclusion that 84% of us believe in a higher power. Now, if you don't know me and you haven't guessed yet, I'm not an atheist. I'm an anti-theist. Now, that's a little bit naughty, but I do think that it kind of gets in the way of people finding themselves and letting go of themselves and becoming human. Now, there are only a billion unbelievers, 16% of the world population. And often they have a belief in other higher powers, okay? So they might engage in religious practice, or they might think there is something out there, which they don't call a religion. It's not, Judaism or Islam or Buddhism, but they think, yes, there's something out there, okay? And I think these days, when you talk to people about the problems that we have, I think a lot of people believe that there are some other kinds of religions called technology, money, and politics, because they say technology will solve this problem. Technology will get us out of the energy crunch. Technology will feed everybody, you know? Or they say money will solve the problem. Throw money at it and we'll be fine. or politics. Just elect the right leader. Luis, I still have the cup. And I want you to know, Luis, that I really, really want to make America great again, okay? Because it once had such promise. Its founding fathers, they nurtured the ideals of natural science. Of course, they were all slave owners and egomaniacs, just like my great-great-great-great-great-granduncle or whatever who signed the Constitution, and, you know, his grandson, who was one of the biggest slave owners in America. We have a legacy which we have to face and overturn. So we in the West, we tend to focus a bit more on religion than those in the East, which is perhaps a little bit unexpected. But only 3% of people in America, for example, are not affiliated with some religion. Whereas in in Asia, 75% are not affiliated. So secularism barely exists in America, while Asia is more grounded. Now that is something that you may want to bear in mind if you are making strategic capitalist decisions for how people behave and what is going to happen to the economies in those two places, whether people are making decisions based on unfounded beliefs or on science. Thank you. I think it's time to move beyond faith, because actually we know what it's all about. I like Terry Pratchett's quote, "In the beginning was nothing, which exploded." Yes, we are an accident. And now we do know what it's all about. Okay, we're not just instinctive animals running off on the hindbrain, eat, survive, reproduce. But our choices do not match our values. We have all those noble aspirations, but we consume poisoned food, enslaved fashion, packaging, a lot of transport, and more than we need. We invest in brands and scale and size and celebrities who do nothing for us. We invest in corruption, apparently, and we invest in war repeatedly. We support corrupt systems. Clearly, there's no democracy. Okay? Money is not barter. A capitalist system is a feudal system of control. The system's not working. We know how to change. That is system change. I suppose what's missing, perhaps, is what happens next. Okay. I'll try and explain the process. This is the emergent process, the holonic process. This is what happens in life outside there, okay? It's what has happened in time since the Big Bang. We see patterns in nature. That's what the scientist observes. The scientist observes patterns in nature. And the spiritual practices and modern science have come together in the past very short time, 50 years, although it's been happening for 100 years. And they both see the same thing, which is that the physical and the metaphysical are co-dependent. They work upon one another. Okay? The basic building blocks of the universe are very simple. It's a binary universe. First it was off, now it's on. And the atoms that evolved from a binary construction, on-off. And today, when we look at the subatomic particles, we can see a kind of that binary pattern. Other patterns occur, the nature of motion, the spinning, the spirals, the shapes, and so on. As time has passed, the universe has become more complex. Okay? And complexity has brought with it what we call life. But there is no distinction in reality between what we have now and what was back then. They're all connected in time. Okay? Contiguous, all is one. And so if we look back in time, humans can do this because of our metacognition, right? The ability to see ourselves, step away from ourselves. This is something which animals don't really have. We can see the pattern emerging, okay? What that pattern shows is an initial need to survive, okay? Now for us, that happens when we're born. The moment we pop out of mummy, we get a slap, and we do what? Okay? That's the first thing we need to do. We need to breathe. You don't breathe, you don't live. You don't breathe, you die fast. Good and quick, minutes. Okay? That's survival. Okay? And there's a powerful survival instinct. And you can definitely see it in the beasts in the garden, because when they get injured, they somehow get back up and keep going. And maybe you've experienced it yourself in your life when you've got hurt and you've just kept on going. You need safety. Okay, that means you need food. Okay, and a shelter. And that's another basic need. And then security. Okay, that's your house and your friends. Okay, then you're sort of able to start looking around and understand yourself. And hopefully you've got to that point by the time you're a teenager. You certainly have the capacity to start understanding who you are as a teenager. You won't have full mental development until you're 25, but you will have started to move beyond the dependencies of infancy. You will have gone through. You will be going through the independencies of young adulthood. And you will start in your late teens to appreciate the needs of interdependencies. Okay, we start to recognize ourselves, understand ourselves, and that's where we can start to choose who we are, what we want to do. And we all have very similar capacities. Okay. Once we're at this point, we can start to choose. That's organizing. We can start to collaborate with others. Okay, build communities. And in that emergence of collaborative behaviors is altruism. Now, altruism is displayed not by very many species, by the bees, who will sacrifice themselves for the good of the whole, some ants, and humans, the martyrs. We will sacrifice ourselves for the whole. Now, to get to that point of being altruistic, you have to accept your own death. You have to come to terms with your own death. You are not going to do that when you are an infant grappling for survival without the perspective that we can have by the time we're in our late teens, early 20s. Okay? Now, many of us don't even get to this point because of the society we live in, which keeps us in a resource-needy state of mind. We are told we need things, so we stay in the lower behavioral profiles of desire and fear. Okay? Although we shouldn't have any desires, although we shouldn't have any fears, because we live in a gentle world which we can manipulate quite clearly. We've changed the face of the earth and we've changed the climate. Okay? We shouldn't be living in that mentality, in that mental state. We should be much more comfortable. We should be able to come up, face our own terminability, our own death, and be willing to move on and live for life. Now, it's those kinds of behaviors, those altruistic behaviors, which we can use as lessons for the future. The challenge, I believe, is to think inclusively. I believe that in many societies around the world, we exhibit the kinds of behaviors that are quite advanced. Okay? We are collaborating, right? We are organizing. You can look at the power of the American economy. That's a well-organized economy, the financial system. It can wield a big stick and smack you good and hard. And we can collaborate. And we're going to need to collaborate if we're going to build another tent. Anyway. Right? So we have some of those behaviors, but what we always do is we talk about us and them. We still think we are separate from one another and separate from nature and separate from existence. And that's just not the case. And when we learn to realize that we are connected to everything, physically and metaphysically, then we will be able to cognitively, but also emotionally, let go of ourselves and move on to live in a much more enriching way. Now, I'm going to pause because the roof's coming down. No, it's not really. I'm going to see if I can share a couple of vids with you, which I may be able to do, and see if there are any questions, which I hope there are, and then I'll come back in a minute. We might play Oshin's new single, which is going to be released on Monday. Bandcamp, Grand Design. He is amazing. And I've locked him out of the meeting, so I better let him back in. But otherwise, he dominates the stage. I'm sorry. I'll be back. It's very difficult for me to give an easy answer. It's very difficult to give the answer that you want. I would say that it's not possible to give the answer that you want, because the answer that people want is a push-button answer. And there is no push-button answer. We have not done this before. Everything is worked out as we go. What we have to do is simply work within the resources that we have, the resources of nature. The principal issue is energy. Right? We have to redesign our whole living system to stop consuming energy so voraciously. Okay? And that includes embedded energy. Watch Planet of the Humans. It's a good place to go. Now, related to energy, of course, we're talking about oil, fossil fuels, which make all of those clothes that come out of Bangladesh into pennies. I shouldn't say names, I do apologize. We all buy them. We need to survive. We're pushed into a situation where we have limited resources and we need to achieve a certain social standing in order to have our own sense of self-worth among our friends. It's not easy. So, energy is embedded in the polyester that is in our clothes. So when you buy socks which are 100% polyester, that's oil. We just have to become aware of our purchasing behaviors. Who makes the product? It doesn't have to be just clothes. It's anything that's happening. People work in very, very difficult environments. I think that the solution is in the direction of micro-technology in localized settings. The technology should be shared widely without the restriction of capital, of ownership, as we understand it, of property ownership, which is a controlling ownership rather than an ownership of responsibility. So those are the sorts of things we've got to do. I think what we're doing now, Corona, Rupert was asking, what is Corona helping? It's helping us stop, reflecting on what we want, what we need, how we live, realizing that we can get by. I mean, well, isn't it ironic? 20 years ago, the eco-warrior in me was proposing staying at home, working virtually, telecommuting, not traveling, having a friend in, whatever it is, Asia, Europe, and America, and working virtually on the internet. And now that's what we have to do. We've stopped traveling to Paris, London, Munich, wherever it is, New York, 3 times a week for the meeting, and we're Zooming it. Yeah? Well, that's much fewer resources. We don't use the office space. And we don't want office space, frankly. We want to get rid of all of those high-rises because those high-rises are redundant. Okay? In 20 years, when the oil runs out, how are you going to get up in the lift? It's not going to happen. So right now, planners have to put that on the table, make people wake up, smell the coffee, and start changing. We changed very quickly. The second lockdown happened, boom, the toilet paper was gone. Right? Come on. You know we can adapt. It's not hard. We can do it with a good ethic and feel good about it. Right? When you have a war 50, 60 years ago, what was it, 70 years ago, all of a sudden, all of the manufacturing capacity was moved over into something which was required to kill the enemy. Well, we don't want that kill the enemy mentality at all. we have to recognize that all is one. We are together. We are them. They are us. Okay? It's an inclusive mindset. And I'm terribly sorry for all of you, my friends, but that includes certain people. Okay? Because we put him there, and we keep him there. And when we get rid of him, we better do it nice. Anyway, yeah, we are all in this together. Maybe I should make some confessions, because well, I've already haven't I? I've told you that I come from the very lucky place. And I'm trying to do things in a different way. Walk the talk, set an example. I haven't been very successful, but I'm really, really happy that you guys are here with me today. There's piles of information on the website. I give most of the stuff away free, except for my time. Well, today, obviously, because I'm just having a party in the tent, lads. It's Friday night, and I'm ready to rock. We'll be having beers later with Oisin's music. I'm sorry you can't all be here. I want you all to come, and we're going to do this better and better. Can we do the language talk? I think language is really important. I'm going to talk a little bit about language. I'm going to talk about language because it's one of those things that divides us. And if we're going to live together, we better start respecting one another. Now, so what is language? The thing about language, and we have to face the reality, is that it's a human thing. Now, I always like to have the idea that we're all connected, so we're not really that much different from the monkeys, from the primates. But language is somewhere where we actually do have a jump step difference. Now, obviously, they have language, they have sounds, everybody has language, the bees wiggle their ass, and we have language, okay? Now, language is a human thing, okay? And whoever your parents are, you will speak the language of the community you grow up in. And we all know that if you're born in London, if you're of a, say, a Nigerian background, you will speak English, not Nigerian. If you are born in Tokyo and you will come from an Anglo-Saxon background, you will speak Japanese. So, what is language? This is the best bit. Language is actually mentalese. Okay? Language is mentalese. Language is for thinking. Sometimes it's used for communication. Okay? Now, words are only part of the message, but the words part of it, sometimes that's involved in the communication. But the language, the words, those are used for thinking. Words are ideas. Each word is an idea. It encapsulates a concept. And it allows you to process ideas, retain ideas, store ideas, compute, analyze. Okay? The development of language in individuals and in the species as a whole demonstrates innovation, creativity, and collaboration, because we have to share aspects of language. Okay. Now, how many languages are spoken in the world? Any guesses? Some people would say 1. Some people would say 8 billion. Both are right. We all speak our own language, okay? We all speak our own language. And this offers a different perspective on personal development, which is very valuable, okay? So it doesn't matter what our genes are, as I said. We speak a code which is understood by those around us. That's the collaborative aspect of it. But we individually create and make up that language as we understand the world around us. We do not learn language in school, okay? We do not learn language in school. Language comes from us, from inside. We copy what's around us, and we interpret the world, and we use those sounds and match them to the ideas in our head. And it becomes a way of thinking better and faster. And that is another reason why language, spoken, is so valuable for developing one's cognitive capacities. Okay? We have to recognize that English, French, Chinese, these are codes to facilitate communication among individuals in communities. I speak my own language. I speak Tom. Pam speaks Pam. and you speak whatever you speak, and you speak it differently to how I speak it. Now, it's very close. It's close enough that we can understand one another, but it's not the same language. And it's not the same language because you think a little bit different to me, among other things. Okay? So we all speak our own languages. Now, perhaps you will remember as a teenager you made up words. I certainly did, and there were words which I liked particularly, and I almost had like a lingo, and I think you can see it. And that is because at that time of one's personal development, language development is particularly energized, and people like to create words, create languages, secret languages. But that's them creating their own words, so it's self-created. For me, the learning of this is that you don't criticize the fellow for not speaking the language properly. You just help them understand that that might not be the way you speak the code of English, because there is no real language English. It's a code for people who are in that community. Similarly, French. With my son, I used to give him such a pain. Oh, Richard, it's not Daddy and me, it's Daddy and I went to the shops. And of course, that doesn't make him feel very good because he's being criticized for speaking his own language, the words that come out of him, and it's him. And this goes on all of the time because the kid is sitting in school and he or she is told by the teacher that they are wrong. And I think that has a profound impact on their sense of grounding, sense of self. Okay? So I think if we start to recognize that we all speak different languages, okay, then it will help us respect each other and understand that maybe we're not saying the same thing. Pam and I have realized that sometimes her words are Canadian and my words are not, and that we have to go back to the beginning and ask ourselves, what are we talking about? Okay? And at the end of the day, remember that we're all the mentalese. That's the same. Okay? Okay, the mentalese, that is the step before we create our language to do the thinking. That mentalese, that's the same in everybody's head. Fairly much, right? Because we all have the same physiological makeup. It's not identical, our brains are all slightly different, but the way the mentalese happens, that's the same. Okay? And it's for that reason that you might say that we all speak the same language. Okay? And each person is speaking their own particular dialect of the same language. An alien would come to the planet and they would look at everybody and they say, oh, look, they're all speaking the same language. It's called mentalese, but they're different dialects. They present the ideas in a slightly different way, but they're all the same. And they all circumscribe the same kind of perspective. Okay? A perspective that is perceivable by this mental machine. Okay? So that monolithic understanding of language being all one, mentalese, reinforces the recognition that we are all one, and our mental processes are similar. Okay? It also suggests that maybe our cognition is limited by the language, by the limits of language. Sorry, the limits of language. Okay, the capacity of all languages that we understand as we understand them. You'll have to go and talk a bit more with a linguist. Chomsky or somebody will help you. You better be quick. He's having too much fun. I think he wants to go and party somewhere else. Okay, and development, therefore, of cognition, okay, and ideas can be accelerated by exposure to complex language and even different languages. Okay, the more complex the language, bigger words and so on, begin to understand them, it helps poke your brain into different places. So language is very important. Controlling language can be a restriction on emotional development, as I've suggested. Can you? Okay. So, recognize that the language, give people the liberty when they're young to create their own language. They won't have the psychological pressure, and it will allow them to learn more freely. Okay? Explore the world around them. Thank you. Now,
To become more symbiotic with our environment, while individual aspirations and behaviors
I don't think individual aspirations and behaviors will remain the same. I think they've already changed. I'll give you an example. I bumped into Peter yesterday in the town. He was having a coffee with Isabel. Peter runs the customer service for an IT company. Not really sure the background. Anyway, basically, he's an office guy, serious manager, a lot of responsibility. And he was commenting on how it was strange not to be at work, and because people were phoning him all the time. And I said, oh, so you'd rather be at work? He said, well, it's not so much that. It's just that people think I'm always there, and so they bother me. And we spoke a bit more, and it became quite apparent that actually he likes being at home, and he's just getting to the point where now maybe he can manage his time in a slightly different way so that he has his own time. Now, I do the same thing here, right? I put limits on the day. Otherwise, people phone you at any time, right? We're open 24/7. We're involved in umpteen different things, activities, from the gardening and the vegetables to the grass and the hay, to the logging, to the hospitality, to the teaching yoga, to the partying in the tent with you, my friends. And, you know, people phone. And I just need to have a life too. So I think people's priorities will change. I think people will realize that they're not getting much fun out of the other car. You know, the other one in the garage and the other one in the garage. It's not actually living. Corona, energy, whatever it is, those are going to push us down into an uncomfortable place unless we let go of our desires and our fears and become more human. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
I really hope to have some more engagement and participation by others on the next time we do this, and I will do some more spieling. I hope you enjoy the videos that I'm putting up. If any of you have any questions, please get in touch. I'm here to serve. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't know how much longer we have left. Thank you very much. We're going to stay around for a little bit longer. If there are any other questions or queries, I'll get to them. I'm going to go and check the machine. Thank you.
For regeneration of planet Earth's capital. How would you like to become CEO of planet Earth? I appoint you.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Thank you very much, Peter. I decline the offer. It does not work like that. This is brilliant, because what Peter has just highlighted is this ridiculous structure that we live in, this pyramid of power. That is not how nature works. Where is the pyramid of power out there? There is no lion running around eating everything, and it doesn't even happen in Africa. The lions live with the buffalo and the monkeys and the grass and the trees and the bananas. They live together. And there is a balance, because sometimes the weather changes, so there isn't so much food around. But if you're a human being, you can manage those food supplies, unless you've become a capitalist and you've pushed all of the inventory out of your value chain. So there is no food in the food supply. And even in Ireland, you can't get yeast in the grocery. It's madness. No, this is the problem. There is no king of humanity. There is no king of the planet. This king idea is the primitive mindset of ego. And we have to move beyond that. We have to change the shape of our society from this to this. Okay? And even in your family, start at home. Start with yourself. Let's say you're, the big cheese, like me. The big cheese. Okay? Well, maybe you've got to be the little cheese a little bit. Okay? And you've got to do the washing up. And you've got to clean the dirt. And you've got to take some flack from the kids. And I tell you, it's not easy. And then maybe they will be a little bit more willing to cooperate with others and not go running around the world with a big stick, hitting people that they don't know. No. We are all CEO of planet Earth. And there is no balance sheet. We are integrated with it. Why seek the division? Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much for your confidence. I would do the good job. And my first act would be to give up the job and turn it over to everybody else. We must take responsibility, not control. We must take responsibility, not control. Oh, thanks, Rupert. Yeah, it's about all of us ponying up and stop relying on somebody else to tell us what to do. I would love to talk to you about capitalism. Capitalism is a serious issue. It's not about the money, okay? Money is simply a measurement tool, okay? It's a value. The thing about capitalism is that it's a controlling system. It's a way of controlling resources, not liberating resources, not sharing resources, not being responsible for resources. It's about controlling resources. And that puts you in a very different mindset. If you have control but no responsibility, you do what you like. It's the same thing with the greedy kid who gets the nice Maserati for his 16th birthday. He had no responsibility. He didn't do anything to get it. So when he rams it into the lamppost, he just says, "Sorry, Dad, can I have another one?" Well, that's what's going on now. Right? That's what's going on now. Anyway, I like that question. If you want the answer, everybody wants an answer. And I said there isn't an answer, which is really what you have to take away in your head. Because if you're not thinking for yourself, if you're not informing yourself, you're not going anywhere. But there is one answer, okay? That's the answer. You have to breathe. You have to breathe. Okay, the reason to breathe is because breathing changes the way your body works. If you do deep, regular abdominal breaths, it changes the way your heart beats. It changes the way the blood flows in your brain, in your prefrontal cortex, in your hindbrain. It activates your consciousness. Your consciousness is activated in your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the human that other primates don't have, not in the same way. Similarly with the larynx, which allows us to express ourselves in communication, okay, which has accelerated the development of our thinking capacity as in language, words, ideas. Okay, so you breathe and you learn to breathe. You start using your conscious mind instead of your hind mind, your primitive brain. In your primitive brain, there are those needs for survival, safety, security. Okay, and that's when you're going to be running around desirous and fearful of what's happening or not happening. Okay, that's what's happening at the back of your head. Now, if you can move on, use your consciousness, that's when you take control of yourself. You overcome your distractions. You don't get distracted by stress so much. You can manage that. You don't get distracted by the emotional pressure of relationships, perhaps, whether they be at work or at home. And you learn to focus. Now, part of the breathing is the focus. When you breathe, those deep abdominal breaths, focus on the breath. Focusing on the breath does a couple of things. The first thing it does is it helps you learn to focus on something. Okay? But it also ensures that you are breathing. So it feeds on itself. The idea of focusing, again, helps you maintain that thought process, not being distracted by something else all the time. You focus. Pam taught me a couple of things to focus on, which is just a mantra of clear and calm, in, out. Some people focus on a counting routine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or maybe a white space. It's different for everybody. The point is, give it a go, give it a crack, teach yourself, look it up on the internet, learn to breathe. It will change your life. It changed mine. And it changed my life for everybody. I wish you all luck. I wish you all love and peace. Good luck and thank you.